Before we address today's topic, I feel the need to make a correction. In my last video I misspoke, inferring that a Satanist would not find sacrifice favorable even in the event of attaining one's goals. In fact, a dutiful Satanist knows when it is in fact important to sacrifice that which can be so in favor of long-term gain. The topic of today's video is in fact sacrifice, more specifically martyrdom, surrender, and to define several important distinctions. Before getting to that, I must bring a few definitions about. The first being homage, in which devotion or respect is paid without expectation or compensation. When we pay homage to something, we often think of it as a deity, legendary piece of film, be it a genre or piece of art. In doing so, we show our respect to said figure without seeking to get anything back. We sacrifice with no intention of compensation or gain. This type of sacrifice, I said, is unfavorable. Why give anything away that we have worked so hard to accumulate in homage to something that may not guarantee any dividends? The second definition I want to look at is fealty. This is devotion or respect paid in exchange for something. In medieval times, when someone, be it a knight, would pay fealty to a king, baron, prince, they ascribed themselves and their services to their liege lord in exchange for protection, lands, resources, or other gains. This type of sacrifice is in fact quite beneficial when it is tit for tat or even tit for even more. This is the type of thing you want to look for when you pay fealty to someone. It is not slavery. It is in fact a contracted agreement. As a Satanist, of course, enjoy your life, soak in the little pleasures. After all, they are what make life worth living. By the same stroke, realize when it is necessary, vital in fact, to make tough choices to delay your gratification in exchange for long-term gain. With that clarified, let's move on to today's topic, specifically martyrdom. It comes in many forms, ranges in severity, none of which are terribly appealing nor terribly effective in your life, both literally and figuratively. When we think of probably the most famous martyr, Jesus Christ and his crucifixion, chances are you're never going to encounter something so blatant, so dramatic, or anything even close to it. Nothing so heavy-handed. That doesn't mean there aren't going to be times when you will be expected or given the opportunity to bear a cross of your own. We on the left-hand path are often faced with these moments, be it being ostracized by friends or family, forced to defend your position or your ideals as a Satanist. You can be at odds with a coworker over a political argument or religious, other religious ideals or personal ideas. Even more minor instances where we feel it would be beneficial to put our own misery on display in an attempt to reap some sort of rewards based on sympathy or guilt. Whatever the circumstances or motivation, it is often very rare that in these moments throwing yourself against the stones of our enemies will in fact be the best course of action. Your family may paint you as a black sheep, your coworkers may plant seeds of doubt with your superiors or other coworkers, you may be even seen as a psychic vampire to those around you. None of these produce the ends that we're trying to gain and will in fact damage your chances of lesser magic getting the desired effect. Instead of martyring yourself, instead of when faced with a tough opportunity, consider surrender. Consider waving the white flag, regroup, and consider the future. There's no shame, in fact, in a tactical withdrawal, be it in a military or social engagement. After all, the coiled snake is in a better position to strike. Think of it that way. Anton LaVey wrote something to the effect, the true Satanist will not be so easily recognized as such, and it's especially true today, especially when it comes to Satanism. Satanism is a tool to better your life, not just a doctrine, not just a religious philosophy. It's meant for you. It's not meant for the people around you. It's not meant to change the world simply by basking in its light. We should remain vigilant in our work, correct our detractors, provide accurate information in this sea of misinformation which we find ourselves, to downplay the sensationalism that mainstream media thrives upon. There are definite and distinct times when we must hide who we are. In fact, we may need to outright lie in order to achieve, assimilate, manipulate, whatever the case may be. Things like political leanings, religious views, social insights are easy to alter in public, and they'll not only keep you free from potential physical harm from your enemies, but also able to use those who would be a potential enemy, and oftentimes to great effect. As a historical example, the author Bertolt Brecht, a noted, very vocal communist and supporter of Marxism, his poems, essays, screenplays all blatantly supported anti-capitalist movements, not just in Europe, but in Los Angeles, in Hollywood, here in America, shortly before and during the rise of the Third Reich in Europe. During this time, the communist witch hunts were a very real thing. He and 19 other writers, specifically the infamous Hollywood 19, including Dalton Trumbo, were brought before the Congressional House On-American Activities. They were put on trial. All 19 of these writers, they prepared angry statements. They were prepared to go toe-to-toe with this committee. They were prepared to martyr themselves for sake of public opinion. And as noble as their cause was, it cost many of them years of valuable time to sell screenplays in a time when the golden age of film. And many of them did not recover from it. They lost their opportunities. Brecht, on the other hand, did not join in with his comrades. In fact, he tried to sway them to another path, a different option. When he was called before the committee, he dressed well. He answered their questions concisely, perhaps not honestly, but succinct, and was not combative. He even deferred to their authority. He used what we call lesser magic. He smoked a big fat cigar because he knew the leader of said committee was a big cigar aficionado. He even brought with him a German-American translator and interpreter. Even though his English was beyond passable, he brought an interpreter that he would field the questions through, and his responses as well. It gave him the benefit of the doubt when he was questioned if something was overtly communist. He would speak with his interpreter, and he would read the same lines back to them in German. When the interpreter translated it to English, it was a completely different piece. Without sacrificing his integrity, without sacrificing his personal beliefs, he was questioned for less than an hour and released a free man with no mar against his passport or his visas, no mar in Hollywood. He was able to go on to continue writing. In fact, the committee assisted him in his passport process to return to his native country in Germany, without scrutiny of the blacklist, where he continued to write, where he continued to sell his work. Unlike many of the Hollywood 19, didn't suffer the same thing simply because he hid in plain sight. He was a wolf in sheep's clothing. There again, he used lesser magic before the term was even coined. Those tactful use of lies and that surrender, that lack of martyrdom, that sacrifice in the public eye were able to preserve him and his career. There are dozens, hundreds, thousands of these examples throughout history. History loves to favor a martyr. It makes for a good story. Now, martyrdom has its place. Obviously, there are times when it has worked. We hear about the ones where it did. But you have to be careful, especially if you're going to give something like your life or your livelihood. You have to make sure there is a guaranteed result to come from it, that your followers, your friends, your peers are going to remember that sacrifice, and it is going to be used. The Hollywood 19 were in fact vindicated years later, and their martyrdom did in fact sway the public opinion to where the committee was dissolved. The communist witch hunts did end up fading away into just American history as a result of their work. That works for them. It's not always going to work for you, and it is especially not always going to be a favorable option right out the gate. It has a time and it has a place. However, surrender, sacrifice, much more poignant. Hide in plain sight. Tuck the sigil away if you need to. Just remember that the wolf hunts better the closer it gets to the herd. We operate best from the shadows. Remember that. Hail Satan.